Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you walked into a movie theater in 1974, perhaps to check out the latest Mel Brooks comedy or the mega disaster flick Airport 2, you'd be met with a strange trailer for a coming attraction. A spine-tingling, blood-spattered, eerie, unsettling trailer for a horror movie, which claimed to be entirely true. The movie was called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this is its story. Horror is a genre with a lot of variety. There are the cinematic masterpieces, using genre conventions as a springboard to comment on much deeper subjects. Films like Get Out, The Babadook, or even The Shining. Then there are the moneymakers, the tentpole slasher franchises releasing semi-annual installments designed to get butts in seats. Think Friday the 13th, or Saw, or Halloween. There are also movies which poke fun at the genre itself, like Scream or Scary Movie, and others still which are best described plainly as vehicles for gore. Now, that isn't to say that those are comprehensive descriptors of the horror genre, nor am I saying that movies can't overlap, but rather I just want to make the point that horror can be many different things, and sometimes a horror is interested in none of that. It's not interested in starting a franchise, or brimming with subtext, or adding some comedic flair to its kills. No, a movie like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is exceedingly rare. This is a horror movie that wants to terrify you. Nothing more, nothing less. And, in my eyes, it succeeds triumphantly. First, you should know the context of the film. This is the part of the video where the aforementioned viewer discretion is most advised. And if you want to just hear me talk about the movie without learning the dark origins, then please skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. This is a scary true crime story, and I want you to be warned. In 1956, in Houston, Texas, a man named Elmer Wayne Henley was born. He had a rough upbringing, frequently assaulting people, stealing things, getting into fights at school, and with his father, who would abuse him in turn. So therefore, it wasn't surprising at all that at age 15, Henley dropped out of school. What was surprising, however, was when he began befriending an older man named Dean Corll. There was never any doubt as to what Corll was. A minimum of 8 boys between the ages of 13 to 17 had disappeared in the span of a year, and all had gone missing near Corll's home. But Henley seemed to trust him. As such, their bond grew quickly. Reportedly, in an early conversation between Corll and the teenage Henley was asked if he'd be willing to kill his classmates for money. He didn't hesitate with his answer. Yes. So, it wasn't long before a deal was struck. Corll would pay Henley $200 for every young male classmate he could bring to Corll's home. There are terrible, gruesome details surrounding the methods that Henley used to trick his victims and the acts committed by Corll in turn, but this isn't the place for those details. All you need to know is that their partnership ended in 1973, when Henley had had enough, shot Corll dead, and was apprehended by Houstonian police. At the time of this video, he's currently serving 6 consecutive terms of 99 years in prison. Altogether, the case was known as the Houston Mass Murders and was called the deadliest case of serial murders in American history at the time. This horrible crime was the basis for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The director of the film, Tobe Hooper, changed the narrative slightly, making it more outrageous so as to instill a morbid sense of levity into the true crimes. He made Corll's character a cook, who has his young accomplices go murder teens for their meat. The family, as they are, produce the best barbecue in all of Texas, and that includes Oklahoma too, for those of you who watched the sequel. If this tale of chainsaw-wielding butchers still sounds horrific, that's because it is. But at least Hooper spared us the dramatization of the Corll and Henley story in its truest form. He did lean into that macabre, based on true events foundation, however. In the opening of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a text crawl reads, "The film which you're about to see is an account of the tragedy that befell a group of 5 youths. The events were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre." Now, it's arguable that the opening crawl is a lie. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as it's defined, never happened. But I think this is the second reason why this film is so horrific. First was the basis of its story, And second, the opening frames of the film tell you that what you're about to watch is more fact than it is fiction. Automatically, therefore, fear is instilled within. This film is closer to watching a true crime series than it is to watching a slasher flick. And therefore, throughout all 83 minutes of runtime, in the back of your head, you can't help but wonder what terrible luck led to these likable teens encountering these horrific criminals. We're aware all along, this story has some truth. Additionally, Tobe Hooper and cinematographer Daniel Pearl utilized the natural Texas landscape to shoot the horrors in a gritty, pseudo-documentary style. A lot of the camera work is handheld, and the locations are dry and empty. Combine that very un-Hollywood cinematography with the fact that every actor here is basically an unknown, and the events of the film feel undeniably real. As critic Mark Olson put it, the movie looks cheap, grubby, and out of control. And as Robin Wood said, the low-budget aesthetic gives the movie the authentic quality of a nightmare. That's clear from the very first frames of the film. This is the middle of nowhere, Texas, the landscape which dots your dreams. And in the middle of nowhere, no one can hear you scream. But scream our main characters do. This is the fifth way TCM is horrifying. The pacing of the film is brisk and straight to the point. By minute 52, every character but one is dead. And for the remaining half hour, we're given no reprieve from her screams. The last third of this movie is an endless chase, and because we've already seen 4 of the 5 teens die so unceremoniously, so horrifically, we're given no reason to believe that Leatherface will go easy on the final girl. In other words, whereas some slashers give one character plot armor so they can survive movie after movie after movie, Hooper makes his killer so brutal and down to business, and his final girl so helpless and extreme in her quest to survive the night, that every minute of the last half hour is full of heart-pumping terror. More than any other horror movie, it feels like Final Girl Sally could die at any minute. If she missteps even once, if she doesn't throw herself through her literal window, for example, she doesn't stand a chance against Leatherface. She can die, just as her friends did. This is all achieved by the pacing, as I said, but also through the grotesque way Leatherface kills. The meat hook death is the most memorable one, but as is in the name, I also have to mention the chainsaw. Leatherface's weapon of choice is as iconic as it is a perfect symbol of his character. We aren't given much insight into his character, but what we do know is that a cattle plant closed down recently and let all of its staff go, including the 2 Sawyer sons. They both only know one thing: butchering. So, now, Leatherface butchers a new type of meat. It's terrifying because we see this guy, this mindless, dumb brute who only knows one thing in life. The chainsaw is to him as a paintbrush is to an artist. And just like the shark from Jaws, there's a sound cue to go with this mindless killer too. We don't even need to see Leatherface to be afraid. When you hear the whir of the chainsaw blades, it's over. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the production design and production history of TCM. The movie was made on a micro budget of $80,000, and if the crew didn't want to waste that money on rental cost, they had to maximize productivity by filming 7 days a week. According to some sources, the shoot ran for 32 days without any break, and this was in July. The scorching hot Texas weather peaked at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. If the heat wasn't enough to anger the entire cast and crew, the production department's techniques certainly tipped the pot. In order to save on cost and add believability to the shoot, art director Robert A. Burns littered the Sawyer farmhouse with genuine roadkill. The house was also, quote, not cooled, and there was little ventilation, making the stench unbearable. Burns wasn't satisfied with just a floor of animal carcasses either. He went to a local slaughterhouse and asked them for buckets of blood, which he proceeded to paint the farmhouse walls with. If that still isn't enough of a horror story for you, you should know that the shoot was also incredibly dangerous for the actors involved. For the scene in which Leatherface cuts Sally's finger to feed Grandpa, the blood tube was malfunctioning. So, how did Hooper improvise? They just actually cut Marilyn Burns' finger with a razor. And the chainsaw that Leatherface is using the entire film, that was real too. And when William Vale voiced concerns about this, he was told, yeah, just be extra still, lest you really want to be killed. They brought a live chainsaw within 3 inches of his face and told him to be still. You can't make this stuff up. Also, this last story about the shoot doesn't fit anywhere else, but I think it exemplifies just how laissez-faire the filming was. John Larroquette, the actor who narrates the opening crawl, was paid for his work in weed. Somehow, I think that's still a better way to cut costs than using roadkill as props, but hey, I've never made a horrific masterpiece quite like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Thanks for watching today's episode of When the Pictures Got Bigger. If you want more horror videos, check out my uploads on the Universal Monsters movies or on the 1988 hidden gem, The Vanishing. Until the next time, I'll see you at the movies.